F1 is entering the second part of the season, with the Dutch Grand Prix getting closer and closer, and at the front of the field it's also getting closer and closer as Red Bull look like their domination is over. But what are we going to see in the second part of the season? Well, in today's video I'm going to be previewing and giving my predictions for the second half of the season. If you enjoyed the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, we are now entering the second half of the season, and the first half has been utter chaos. The season started off more with the same from 2023, as Max Verstappen dominated the early races, and it looked like at this point Red Bull was going to clean up like they did last year. Sergio Perez was fairly consistently scoring podium results as well. However, this all changed at Miami when Lando Norris in the Mclaren beat Max. After this, pretty much everything changed. Max did go on to win the next race at Imola, and also Canada and Spain, but after the Spanish Grand Prix that changed. At Austria, Norris was coming back at Verstappen at the end of the race, and he was much faster. They came together in the last couple of laps, and George Russell ended up taking the win. At Silverstone, McLaren and Mercedes were faster than Verstappen in the dry conditions early on, and it looked like Max was going to finish in 5th place. He didn't win that race either, but he could have done as he was on fire in the final stages as the hard tyres looked like the right tyres to be on for the final stages of the race when the rain stopped. At Budapest, McLaren were in another league, and Verstappen should have finished 3rd, but he got frustrated battling Hamilton. And then at Spa, Verstappen dominated qualifying in the wet conditions, but in race trim his pace faltered, and that brings us to now. To give some context to the levels that Verstappen has been performing at, this is his largest losing streak since 2020. In 2021, Verstappen only lost 3 races in a row. In 2022, Verstappen lost a maximum of 2 races in a row, and last year Max won every single race after losing a Grand Prix. So right now, Verstappen is on a 4-race losing streak, and the next set of races are not going to be much kinder to Verstappen or Red Bull. The field is now so close in F1 that the sport has managed to have 7 different winners this season, which is the most since the incredible 2012 season, as Verstappen, Sainz, Norris, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton and Piastri have all won races, leaving only Sergio Perez to be the driver in the top 8 to not win a Grand Prix. And going into the next couple of races, I can see the winners being mixed up once again. The Dutch Grand Prix should be a great race for McLaren as it features a lot of twists and turns. Ferrari might also be in a better position at this race. Then at Monza, Red Bull should bounce back as their potency in a straight line will benefit them. But then at Baku and Singapore, we are likely to see Red Bull struggle a little bit more due to it being a street race, and we should see the likes of Ferrari and McLaren and also maybe Mercedes being stronger at those events. This is to say Verstappen and Red Bull's winless streak may continue. McLaren are likely to be strong at most of these events, and with Red Bull racing with one arm tied behind their backs, then it will mean they are likely to fall even further back and back into the clutches of the papaya team. That doesn't mean Verstappen and Red Bull will not be in the mix, of course. Verstappen is by some distance the fastest driver overall on the grid, in my opinion, and if he can maximise the Red Bull, then you can't count him out for race victory. It is though just more fun seeing him having to fight for wins instead of running off into the distance. For the midfield fight, it is as close as ever as well. It looks like though VCarb, who started off very strong, have fallen back a little bit when it comes to overall performance, as their car doesn't seem to now be as strong as Aston Martin, Haas and Alpine, and maybe even the Williams if Williams get everything right. Aston Martin will likely hang on to 5th in the Constructors' Championship, but the battle between these teams is really going to hot up and be exciting to watch. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Mercedes. For Mercedes, they have been one of the biggest winners as the season has progressed from the very beginning. At the beginning of the year, Mercedes looked to be really on the back foot and they were the 4th fastest team and battling Aston Martin at the early stages. But as the season has progressed and Mercedes have brought upgrades, they have moved forward as a team and they've gone from struggling to finish in the top 5 to being a team that can now fight for podiums and even victories, as they are the team with the 2nd most victories so far this year, with Russell winning in Austria. And of course he did technically finish first at Belgium, but it was teammate Lewis Hamilton who won the Belgian Grand Prix, and Hamilton also won the British Grand Prix. The second half of the year is looking like it should be a continuation on how they ended the first half of the year. Mercedes are said to be bringing a raft of new upgrades as they continue to close the performance gap to McLaren and Red Bull, and if these upgrades work, then I see no reason why we can't see them fighting for wins, race in and race out. Mercedes' biggest strength, it has to be said, is how they are operationally as a team. In general, with Mercedes, they find themselves finishing higher up in the race than really they should be. We saw them do this to perfection in 2022 and 2023. In 2023, they finished 2nd in the Constructors' Championship, despite having arguably the 3rd or even 4th fastest car. They are great at maximising what they have. They were not the fastest car at Silverstone, and really they were not the fastest car in Belgium either, but they found themselves winning both races. For Ferrari, the season has been very disappointing, it has to be said. It started off with so much promise and looked very strong early on as Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc were often the other drivers on the podiums alongside Red Bull when they were at their strongest. It looked like a continuation from then, and as the season has progressed, Ferrari have managed to regress. They have brought a number of upgrades, but it's not helped them, and they have fallen backwards in competitiveness. It's easy to forget that Carlos Sainz won the Australian Grand Prix pretty easily, and Charles Leclerc won in Monaco pretty easily as well, as he was able to hang off the McLarens and then pull away from them at the end of the race. Since then though, it has all been downhill with a number of incidents, issues and a general lack of performance. In the second half of the year, I can see them having a couple of good races, including Baku, where Leclerc always seems to be strong, and also Singapore, given they won there last year. But in general, I can see them being behind Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull without large changes. For McLaren, it is truly incredible to see how they've gone from being the 3rd best team to being the team to beat this year, as it's looking more and more likely that they will beat Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship this year. They are helped massively by the fact that both their drivers are delivering good results. They arguably have the fastest car now, but McLaren must improve their decision-making skills during a Grand Prix. The Hungarian Grand Prix highlighted a massive weakness in the team, as they backed themselves into a corner by bringing Norris in early and then leaving Piastri out to dry for a number of laps, only to then bring him in and have him come out behind Norris, and then they had to plead to Norris to let Piastri by. It really soured Piastri's first win. He was doing so good up to that point, controlling the race and doing very, very well. Norris has also got to improve his performance at the beginning of the races, as at a number of times, especially recently, Norris has found himself losing ground at the start, which is not good enough, especially if one day he dreams to fight Max Verstappen for the Drivers' World Championship. And finally, for Red Bull, it was a season that started off looking like a repeat of 2023, but as the season has continued, it looks to have been anything but that. The season started off incredibly smoothly, but as Mercedes and McLaren have closed the gap on them, their car has struggled with upgrades. A lot of the upgrades that have gone on their car has maybe made it faster, but it has made it suffer in a lot of other areas, and they are not able to ride the curbs as well as they could in the past. And Max Verstappen is having to drive the wheels off the car in order to remain competitive, which to his credit he has been doing. However, it does make it somewhat understandable why his frustrations are starting to boil over, as he is having to push so hard week in and week out in order to keep up with McLaren. Teammate Perez has quite frankly fallen off a cliff, and he's clearly lost all confidence in the car. In the second half of the year, I can see a few very tricky races ahead for Red Bull, and I can see them losing the lead in the Constructors' Championship. However, I do still expect a very strong end to the season with them, as they are typically very strong at Mexico and Abu Dhabi. So, what are my 5 predictions for the second half of the season? Well, number 1, I think Aston Martin will cling on to 5th place in the Constructors' Championship, as they've done enough in the early races to make sure that they are pretty much untouchable from the competition behind. Number 2, Renault will begin the sale of the Alpine team, as it's looking more and more likely that Renault will be leaving Formula 1. Number 3, Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull will continue to be in the mix for race wins, and they are going to share a lot of wins between them in the remaining races. Number 4, Max Verstappen will win the Drivers' Championship with 2 races to spare. And number 5, McLaren will win the Constructors' Championship this year. But those are my predictions. The question is, what do you guys think is going to happen in the second half of the season? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Preview and predictions for the Dutch Grand Prix will be back next week, so I hope to see you guys there. Thank you all so much for watching.